Absolutely. And I, like at the end of the day, I think that what I look back now, some of the key influences of my life and the ones that I'm passing on to my kids, whether I want it or not, are very much related to, to my mom and how she run her life. Um, Pretty much like regardless of those, like changes between a basketball player and, redefining herself at 35 and then redefining herself at 40. It was very clear to me how she was, it's not that she was fearless. She was petrified every time she had to make a change. It was hard every time. It was really the ups and the downs economically and socially, but she was not going to let fear define her life. It was not going to be, she was not going to let fear take the decisions of her life. So I think that one of the key lessons I learned is how she was fear free, and how much I wanted to do that. And even when she was, like suffering from COVID over the last 169, you could see that she was like fighting for it and embracing life and loving life and trying to get hold of it and not being scared. And she wanted to cross that bridge. So I think that one of the key influences that I have from her is that fear is not going to be the driver of your life, and that we should all strive to feel and to feel fear free, if not fearless.
A huge earthquake struck in Mexico, I think in 1985, and this was during your teenage years. I've been told that this was a major turning point in your life. Can you tell us what can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, and pretty much I think that everybody has one or two stories that if you look back and you're very honest in memory lane, you can start seeing the definition of who you are and what you do. And for me, the earthquake was clearly one of them. The It was not one earthquake; it was a series of earthquakes that hit Mexico City in 1985, and I was a teenager. And I recall very clearly how after the first one, which was massive, almost like almost shook the entire city down. Um, all of us were just out of our homes and out of our buildings and started looking around and seeing what happened, and seeing whether like we could see our neighbors and friends and family. And then the second earthquake started hitting, and everyone, it was like an incredible act of leadership and self-organization where someone said like, here, let's actually gather here and let's put, like let's start bringing food so that we can have shelter, and here let's put all the children in this area. And so everyone became a volunteer, and I went into volunteering with one group that was sweeping the streets of neighborhood, and our job was to find whether there was no one trapped, like no one left trapped in those buildings. And I remember distinctively how confusing it was, and I was the only teenager. Every one of my team was, like big guys, and and I just was walking in the street when all of a sudden I felt something that like made me stop and just like started shouting out loud, very loud, like, stop, stop, come here, come back. And there was this one guy in my group that turned around and looked at me and said like, what? I think I heard a voice. And he looked at me angry and said like, think or heard. And I just looked at him back and started shouting even louder, like, stop, come back, come back. So he came back to me. And by the time he was with me, it was clear there was someone trapped in that. There was someone trapped in that building. And so both of us looked at each other and started shouting, like, stop, come back, come back. And two more people came and we started shouting together. And then four more people came. And then it was enough of us to start looking at, start pushing that wall. And we started pushing what felt for me for hours until we were able to move that huge wall. And there was the moment in which the light came in, and there they were, the eyes of this girl. There was eyelashes full of dust and looking at us, thinking like, "You got me right. Uh, I'm safe." And I remember actually distinctively that was the first ever time where I felt useful. It was a new feeling and it was overwhelming. And looking at the mother hold the girl, and and walking with, without even noticing who started shouting and so on, I realized that's something I wanted to do. But also I remember how much it made sense to me that all of a sudden, like all the complaints of my dad, like, oh, Claudia, you're so loud, you're so loud. I was like, yeah, it's great to be loud. It's great to be able to, I was able to call in and call on the attention of many people that didn't see something that was valuable, that was there. And I had been privileged and honored to be able to be doing just that for more than 25 years, just being using my voice as a marketer, as a communications person, as someone to make sure that I'm attracting the attention of people to put their hearts and mind to do something and to act for something that probably they don't see or they haven't even seen before.
And you've also been in the driving seat of some of the most successful global campaigns of the last decade, as we had mentioned. You were very instrumental. You were instrumental in the creation and launch of the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. They are the 17 SDGs, as they're called, has 169 targets, and they initially originated from the Millennium Development Goals, but much wider in scale and ambition to eradicate poverty and realize to create a more sustainable world. Can you tell us what that journey was like in launching and creating the SDGs?
Year, people realized that I was good at putting master plans, and so they started moving me from one place to the other. I pretty much felt like a, like a plant that people were moving from one office to the other when we needed to create master plans to launch and again mobilize the hearts and minds of millions and millions of people. And so the Sustainable Development Goals is the master plan for the future of the people on the planet. I 100% believe on it. I think that there is no plan B and there's no planet B either. So we better embrace them. And it's historic that 193 countries have signed it. So the question is, how are we going to make them famous? How are we going to get people to be excited about them? How do we get companies, individuals, and countries where they don't think that they need to be talking about poverty or education to care? So I broke it down. I think that it was the most intensive work time of my life. I woke up every morning at 4 a.m. trying to actually to have 3 hours of work and mind, like deep mind, deep work on the strategy for months and months before I had to just like wake up and be a mom and then just like get on my work every day. So it was really strategic about like thinking, how do you crack the system, how do you really get to be taken on. It was very much tapping into my own entrepreneurial spirit of being a 0 to 1, so a ground, path breaker. So I'm not a 1 to 100, I'm a 0 to 1 person. That's most of my skill. So it was about like bringing that up. What we did was look at the world and say like, what are the ways in which you can break this down so that as many people as possible can absorb it. And we decided to divide it with, like on, okay, technology, media, cinema, photography, artists, communications, and so on, in my world of how to get mobilization. And then we went to the 5 most important players per industry in the world and started actually looking at partnerships. It was not the easiest piece, I have to say. And it was very important for me to remember what was the end game, and play the rules. And the rules at the United Nations at that time were, you either get credit or get things done. So I wanted to get things done. So I actually make sure that I was like as much as possible invisible, so that like many people felt the ownership of the plan and just take it.
To continue listening to this episode, please visit thefounderspirit.com or search for The Founder Spirit on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Jennifer Wu.